And now here's part 2 of our episode.
All right. What makes this a standout?
All right. So we have just about every perfect element in this perfect album in this perfect song. So we start out with these like beautiful flutes and this beautiful lightness to it. And it eventually by the end builds to this beautiful kind of choral moment, right? We get this really great build. And I'm just so in love with that little melody that starts with the flutes and then Sufjan takes it over. It's just like, oh gosh, the melody is just so good. And then he ends up kind of growing this big tree in this piece. But what is standing out for me now in this era of my life, to use some T Swift vernacular, because I listen to so much Taylor Swift. No, is that it's really the text. Like the text of this is so. I think this is in some ways more gut wrenching than Casimir Pulaski. It's really about like your first queer love and what that means and what it means to kind of, figure out that landscape, and how young queer love has to be with two people. Like there's always, and everybody's in a different stage in their queer journey. And like, it's so specific to his upbringing, but then also all of us queer kids can feel those same things. Like, what does it mean when you grow up in the church and the church is and your parents are watching you and they don't want you to, have these feelings, or you feel like you can't express yourself in these ways. And then, I'm going to be gutsy and I'm going to express myself in these ways to this person I have feelings for, but they're not there yet. And then they reject me or they move on and we can't be friends anymore. And all of that is just like, oh God, I feel that so much. And that's such it was such an early exposure for me to that sort of story that then was just like, oh, I really understand that and felt really seen for that in this like beautiful, like lush musical moment. Yeah. That's why it's standing out to me right now. And I think too, I was looking at the landscape of the Palisades, which is it's on the west side of Illinois, and it's right by the Mississippi River. And it's where Sufjan went to camp. I think he went to summer camp over there. And after I learned that, I listened again and I was like, it's almost like he has some steamboat pieces in this as well. I'm like totally getting this like feeling of the west side of Illinois, which like nobody really talks about because it's next to boring Iowa. Yeah. Which is probably why he didn't do any more Midwestern states, because he got to Iowa and said, no, thanks.
And he saw Missouri down there and he's like, I ain't even touching that.
Yeah, right.
I think there were rumors he was considering Oregon and Rhode Island as the next potential states. I think he actually wrote one song that's about Rhode Island, and I mean, like, I think it was in like the next album he released where he sort of released a statement that was like, hey guys, that was a cool idea, right? Ha ha ha, really hard to do. Never mind, bye. Like that's essentially what he said.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I think his mom and stepdad lived in Oregon though, right? So that would track. That would track. Yeah. And so maybe Carrie and Lowell ends up being a little bit of a Oregon album anyway.
Yeah.
Essentially. Oh yeah, that would be we almost talked about that album earlier in the podcast.
Yeah. Not to show my cards, but Carrie and Lowell might be my Sufjan album. Yeah. And I think I want to call out this thing, and we'll probably call out more of this in our deliberation phase. But the kind of universe contained within a song being the essential strength of what makes this particular song the standout. I think it's a really well made point, because there's a drama. There's a drama that he is able to inject into the Midwest, and I think I commiserate with this experience of being a Midwestern kid at that particular time and being like, wow, somebody's really made this into high drama, made this into theater, like kind of expressed this place in a way that I feel it. And maybe I hadn't seen it depicted in media up to that point. And yeah, I think there's such a heightened. He has the ability to heighten the emotional landscape of a person and like an audience in a way that doesn't feel manipulative either. It doesn't really feel like it's trying to take advantage of your experience or your feelings as well. It's genuinely like a connection that is being established, as opposed to it being used against you in some way. Not that anyone really sets out to, or if they do set out to do that, then fuck them. But, like that's hope that people aren't setting out to do that as folk musicians.
Yeah. And this piece is so particularly reflective. Really that first verse is about him reflecting on this. And so we kind of have these like almost like three locations in our brain that like we're watching him when he's with the flashlight under the sheets, I think something like that in the beginning. And then he eventually goes to, you're in the Palisades and he's wearing his brother's red hat. And it's like, it's so nostalgic too, that like, and nostalgia comes up for me in this album a lot. Also comes up in my work a lot. Just like, what is nostalgia? What is memory? How do we all deal with that? I'm very much rose. I got rose-colored glasses on when I think about the past. It's all very nice. Yeah. And how do you evoke that in people to think about their own past? And I think this piece so greatly does that because we can see him doing that himself, which is so nice. And that like, not to be like, it gets better. Like that's not exactly what I'm going for, but the fact that like he can look back on this experience and understand how it formed him as an adult, kind of is a great example for other people that you can have these moments of trials, tribulations, what have you, and then you can come back and reflect and understand that even if it was good or bad, it has impact and it grows you into the type of human that you are.
Yeah.
Did you hear it that way even before we learned? I mean, actually, we technically haven't learned how Sufjan identifies. All we know is that his long-term partner, as far as I know, was also male identifying. I mean, like, is that something that since that came out that you see more clearly, or did you already kind of sense that, or did you already like latch onto that before learning this? I think I latched on before, and I don't think it matters. For me, I think it's like there was some reason, and this is why I reflect why it hit me was that because it's a Midwestern kid, on late at night with the flashlight, and you had a first love that went weird. And like that for me were all the connecting points, and I don't necessarily need the queer narrative to feel that. That it still does its magic kind of no matter who the characters are, I think.
It's a more, I'm going to use this word again. I've really enjoyed this word this season. It's a more capacious understanding of the concept of queer, right? Like I appreciate that. And so maybe not saying he was ahead of his time, but he might've been a little bit ahead of his time in terms of in terms of not necessarily needing to label it quite so much, and understanding that this trying to fit the concept of love and however that manifests itself into some kind of box may be kind of a fool's errand, or at least is limiting in a way that it sounds like he wasn't interested in.
Yeah, it feels like something that like an uncle would be like, "Is that a man singing about a man?" It's like, but it doesn't matter. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, does it matter?
Yeah.
For some people it does, and for some it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this seems like a good time for us to talk about, we asked you to nominate 4 albums that were perfect.
Yeah.
Didn't define that term for you. I trust you to have a very robust opinion about the concept of perfection in general. But tell us, what were some of the standards that you were using to judge these albums against as you were nominating them?
Yeah, I think the biggest one was, do I listen to it from top to bottom? Am I skipping around at all? And so this one, I think, is meant to be listened to as a whole. as a writer, I love the idea of something encapsulated completely into one piece that is all parts are necessary. So that was definitely number one on the list. That kind of weeded out a handful of like, oh, I really like these 3 songs, but I really don't like the other 10.
It's not a good ratio.
It's not a good ratio, right? Yeah, that's kind of my I either love everything or I'm down to just 2. So that was really the biggest part. And I think just about everything on there were all things that I've been listening to for decades. They're really pieces that have stuck with me and have been really pivotal in my like artistic life. And what things do I go to listen to when I'm in a certain creative mood? And what can I have in the background that like is going to keep me going? Which my list is, kind of an odd list sometimes to like be in that mood. Like, Jane, you're going to listen to the Carpenters' Christmas album on repeat while you're writing. Yeah, guys, that's going to happen sometimes.
There's no right or wrong answer, and we're not yucking on yums here.
Yeah.
We respect that.
Yeah. So those are really the two main things.
So would you say that they're, in the spirit of it being a complete document that can be listened to from top to bottom, are there any skips in your opinion?
I actually don't think so. I'm looking at the list. Every once in a while, I'm like not in the mood to listen to John Wayne Gacy.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a particular song that evokes a lot of weird visuals, and sometimes I don't need that. I think that's the only one that sometimes I skip.
Yeah,
that song did prompt me to go on a bit of a wiki binge that like I felt kind of icky afterwards. But I mean, it's such a soft song about a horrible thing that's like, I don't know. But again, I think like, and maybe when we talked about Javelin briefly in our one of our episode last year, was that last year, Tyler?
I think it was the end of last year.
Wow. Okay. All right. When we talked about that, like the fact that Sufjan does have this ability to kind of deal with difficult stuff in a surprising way, not to like, undermine all the bad stuff that John Wayne Gacy did, but to sort of like humanize him and also be like, this was a bad thing. Which, I mean, a lot of musical artists don't have that ability. They're kind of like everything's one-sided, and I don't know.
Negative capability, isn't that what Keats called that? The ability to live in the uncertainty of not having a clear answer about whether something is good, bad, right, or wrong. Obviously, some things are wrong that John Wayne Gacy did. A lot of things. Let's make no bones about that. But I think I think there, especially with the emotional tenor that album or that song gets to. Yeah. Just kind of like the rawness. It doesn't feel there. Obviously, it's very calculated and very like well constructed, but that is one of those songs that kind of gets to a fever pitch in a way that's striking, which seems to fit for the subject matter. Because you got to kind of take it seriously, right?
Mm-hmm. What do you say to people who call Sufjan Stevens' music twee? Because I feel like that's often a word that gets used. I mean, like, again, I left so much stuff on the cutting room floor, but when they tried to pin a genre on him, there were like 17 different genres listed.
Right.
But I have often heard people refer to him as being kind of twee in sort of like a, oh God, what's her name? The one who's married to Andy Samberg.
Joanna Newsom.
Yeah, and kind of like a Joanna Newsom sort of way. Like, does that make sense to you, or do you think that's kind of reductive, or is it accurate and also amazing?
Okay, I've never heard the term twee before.
Really?
No.
I've heard it most applied to Wes Anderson.
Twee. Oh, twee.
Yeah, so and to me, Wes Anderson, I'm going to go ahead and give my take on that question, Michael, is that I don't think Sufjan's twee. I think that's reductive. To anyone who would say that about Sufjan, I'm throwing in my lot with you, Janie. But to anyone who would say that, I would feel like they haven't been exposed to enough of his music.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, I guess like if I had to define twee, I would say it's like it's cute and precious, but not overly sentimental.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Tyler? Or is it sentimental? And
I think when people use the word twee, they usually use it as a pejorative, meaning
Sure.
that it is style and no substance, right?
Got it.
Yeah, but also like, I mean, because I think the thing about there's also, I feel like there's something small, like twee is twee. It's like tiny and cute, but you're not gonna cry about it, but you're not gonna gush about it. You're just gonna kind of go. It's very like,
yeah. I would say
like,
that's an accurate definition. I would
Okay.
Yeah.
Like Urban Outfitters meets Hallmark.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, no.
No, thank you.
People like, have you ever had like 2 old fashions and like listened to a sad album in a room with the lights off? Like that's,
Yeah.
you know, like that's this. His music lets me feel my feelings, which you know, people find that in all different sorts of artists, and for me, that's where I connect, and I have weird Midwestern gay feelings, and so does Sufjan. So like,
Sure.
that's. I also think if people call Wes Anderson twee, like I love Wes Anderson, and like I think both Wes and Sufjan actually do a really great job of creating atmosphere, creating place, creating the sense of location. That for me, that's something that I find really artistically fulfilling to witness and watch, and it's actually something I strive to do. So I say fuck all those people.
Well said. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where like if you like it, you like it. Who cares?
Well,
I'm so in an age where like I don't care. If you like something that I hate, good for you. It's not for me. It was made for you. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's
You know?
the Apple Jacks argument. You familiar with this?
No.
Okay, so there was an old Apple Jacks commercial would be like, these kids would be like, "Hey, does that cereal taste like apples?" Or like, and the person would say like, "No, it doesn't." And they're like, "Well, why do you like it?" And they'd say like, "Well, we just do, all right." So like, it's sort of the Apple Jacks of it all.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel very old today. The references I'm bringing up today.
No.
So old.
This is good. Apple Jacks I haven't had in a long ass time. I think I might need to add that to the rotation. I'm on a cinnamon life kick like I always am. That's my cereal of choice.
I will say, Michael, the 2 references you made were both television references, and I personally grew up as a kid without cable, so like I only watched Wishbone, and that didn't have any commercials. So
Yeah.
yeah. And if you compare my work side by side with Wishbone, a lot makes sense.
Some decades from now, some student in getting their doctorate will write a dissertation about the Janie Killips oeuvre, and they will compare it to Wishbone, and you will feel vindicated.
Wishbone meets Veggie Tales, the greater work, the greater work of Janie Killips. Okay, I think it's time for deliberation phase. Dun dun
dun dun dun.
Gotta work on the sound effects.
Yeah, we don't have one.
We're getting there.
Season 8.
You want to start, or you want me to start, Michael?
I'll start it. I mean, I think so full disclosure, like, you know, this I believe was on the list, the unofficial list that Tyler and I have of if someone brings it forward, we're covering it right away. Like we've been waiting for someone to come on and talk about this. So like when we saw that, you're not the first person to put it on, but I think the previous person who put it on also had some really strong candidates who were also on that list. So we were like, we got to go with those first. But I mean, I think that hearing you talk about folk music kind of like at the very, very beginning of this conversation, I think kind of cemented it for me because, you know, I referenced the fact that like every song feels a little bit different and some of them are sort of educational and some are like these gut-wrenching personal stories that feel autobiographical, even if they're not. And I always have a sort of associated with folk just being like, yeah, someone's got a guitar, someone's got a banjo, someone's got a stand-up bass, and like everyone's in Tennessee and they're all like, you know, sitting on a porch and making music that way. But I think that you explaining that at the beginning helped to kind of expand the definition for me a little bit and to see and to sort of like the perception I already had of this album has now kind of multiplied as a result of that. Because I was already sort of all in. Again, not showing all, well, I'm showing all my cards. I'm just showing all my cards.
Yeah.
How about you, Tyler?
You're holding those cards up in front of the Zoom screen.
Exactly.
I would agree with all those points. And I think I knew it's great when we talk to somebody, as Michael and I being, you know, Michael's a musician. I'm, you know, I don't play much music anymore, though. I could probably, if you gave me a trumpet or a tuba, I could probably figure something out, even after all these years, which is kind of fun to think about. But, you know, I think that there is a real power to the way that you talked about place with the way that Sufjan is able to, because place is something, even when it's not as specifically defined in his work, place is there. Like in Carrie and Lowell, in Javelin that came out last year, place is still there, and it takes quite the writer to be able to do that. And I love you, Janie. You also do that. It's a particular power of yours. So the ability for folk music to do that in a particular way, I think that was a really well made point. I think your item about listening to it on vinyl for the first time and saying out loud that this album was made to be listened to on vinyl is a really strong, because it's I don't have this album on vinyl, but I have Michigan on vinyl for whatever reason, and I can't really listen to Michigan. I can't really stream Michigan. Like it really wants to have a little bit of ritual around it. It wants to have you lift the lid on the turntable, set the record down, turn it on, like whatever ambient noise settles, right? It wants all of that. And I think the ceremony, the kind of heart leading ideas that you expressed around this album and around his greater body of work, I think are all really a credit to this album and everything else that he does. So I don't know, though. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a hard choice, though.
I mean, I want to also just piggyback real quick. I cannot listen to the song Chicago without thinking of Chicago. And I don't know why that song sounds like Chicago. I know he calls it Chicago, but like
it does.
It just does. It just sounds like maybe it feels like the CTA train to me in some ways, but it also feels like a road trip through the Midwest at the same time. Like there's just a lot. Anyway.
It's also a much better song to listen to now when you're coming up Lakeshore Drive than Homecoming by Kanye West, because let's just not. That was the old one that I used to. That's the old one I used to do. Okay, so
I'm gonna propose something, Tyler.
Yeah, you want to do it?
Skip the formality.
Oh yeah,
she just gets it.
You just get it.
Yeah, you get it.
You did it. Come on in. Yeah. The water's fine.
They made such a good case, and we wanted to cover the album anyway. Yeah. So it
absolutely enters
Mutual Admiration Society here, also involving Sufjan.
Yeah. Well done. Yeah. Oh wow! Thanks, guys. Wow.
Well done, Killips. We expected no less. Okay, so we're as our listeners might know, we're recording this all out of order in an effort to front load our work this season. So unfortunately, Janie's show just closed. But do you want to plug anything else? I mean, you're always busy and you're always doing a million great things. What can you share with our listeners? Where should they keep an eye out for you?
Yeah, check out Birch House Immersive on all of the socials. By that, I think just mainly Instagram. And our website, birchhouseimmersive.com. We do a yearly Valentine's Day show called Lonely Hearts, coming up on year 8, which is crazy to think.
I might have been involved in that show at some point.
That's right. And same with this old Stanley back here, my puppet Stanley.
Oh, yeah.
Hanging out in my office. But actually, more importantly, luckily, the last days of Eden Creek, we recorded the album. So that will be available. I'm not quite sure where and how, but you can check out our website. It'll have all the info there. We did a musical last show and we regretted not recording the album. So this time we're going to do it. And I'm very, very excited to share this music with people, especially folks that can't come and see the show in person. I think it is still going to be an impactful piece that you can just listen to.
Hell yeah.
Was your articulation of .com in any way inspired by Homestar Runner?
Yikes. Yeah. It sure was.
You're in good company here, Janie. Yeah. You're in very good company here.
I love me some Homestar. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. Well, this was a real treat. You inspire me all the time. You inspire me all the time. And we can't thank you enough for coming on.
Yeah, well, thank you. Listeners, the amount of times I clutched my heart during this podcast just to be with these handsome gents, it was a real treat.
Say hi to the fam for us.
Yeah, I will.
And dear listeners, if you've never listened to Illinois, also sometimes called Illinois, also sometimes called Sufjan Stevens Invites You to Come On, Feel the Illinois, then do yourself a favor. If you can get it on vinyl, I think, didn't they like reissue it a few years ago? Like another one?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
15th anniversary, maybe?
Usually resend it every couple of decades. So
Vinyl's back, baby. Vinyl's back.
So give it a listen. Yeah,
go like and subscribe us. Do all that. Do if you want to leave a comment and tell engage in that way. You should tell us your opinion. What's your favorite Sufjan album? Is it Carrie and Lowell? It's a great one. Why? Discourse.
or is it the Avalanche, which was all the B-sides from Illinois? It's called the Avalanche, right?
Yeah. I love the Avalanche. I have that one on vinyl too.
Or is it Sisyphus, his hip hop group with Serengeti, other noted Chicago rapper? You got options. We've just scratched the surface.
Sufjan contains multitudes, y'all. So you should go check that out. Follow us on all the places. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a nice 5-star rating on Spotify. Can you do that on Apple too? You probably can.
I think so.
Rate us there. But yeah, thanks so much for listening, y'all. Hope you enjoyed it.
Love y'all. Bye.
Bye.